Professor Rundin has been going through a number of lectures where he's gone into SPS in quite a bit of detail. And it would be good, I think, if you went back over those and if you to really get kind of a continuous and detailed understanding of how to get into SPSS, how to work it, and so on and so forth. I'm going to try and address some of the questions that came up that I've noticed in Google Groups recently, and also to kind of like maybe prep you a little bit for how SPSS can be useful to you in your project and what's going to be coming up in the coming weeks, because there are some types of analyses that we haven't done yet, that haven't covered yet in class, that are going to be meaningful to you as we move forward. And that's really all of this analysis is really data driven. It's all based on the choice of the tests. How we do the tests is really based on what kind of data that we're dealing with. So I have the Community Health Survey data set open right now. We have a couple of versions of this, I know, that we're working with. This one is the full data set, right? If you take a look at it, right now I'm in the data view, and you see nothing but numbers. If I click on view and uncheck value labels, I see nothing changes there. Turn it on and off, nothing changes. That's because this data is uncoded. And again, Professor Rendina, I think, covered a lot about the coding. But right now, this data, for instance, one of the columns here, I think it's pretty far down, is called borough, which is pretty obvious what that's going to be. Let me see where I have to go. It's number 40 something. Smoking. I think it's before smoking. I wonder if I can search for it. I don't think I've tried this. Nope, didn't find it. Let's do it this way. Let's look at the variable view. I think it's 40 something smoker. There it is, borough. Oh, it wasn't even that far across. Okay, let's see. See where it is here. Neighborhood group, general health. I should see it in the 16 slot. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Work past nutrition. There we go. Well, there it is. There's borough. So pretty obvious. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But these are the New York City boroughs. But SPSS doesn't understand that. It has no idea what these numbers mean. The reason why they're numbers instead of the actual borough names is that at some point this data had to all be collected and input into a computer. So if you were to, every time you got, and surveyor got to this point, most likely they're working from automated surveys. Like, in other words, they color in a box or something like that for what borough it is. The computer then would read that, or they would be typing it into a keyboard or something like that. If you went here into, like, say say number 3 is Queens, if you had to type in Queens every time you wanted to enter Queens, it's going to take a lot longer than just putting a 3 in. In addition to that, you can mistype it. You can have a typo. In addition to that, you can have something as simple as using a capital Q or using a lowercase q, and computers being what they are, it may interpret it differently. It may not understand that that's the same function. Or you may have to do a lot more coding to get the computer to understand it's the same function. There's a certain value in assigning codes to these various values, especially nominal categories of nominal values, assigning codes to them so you can input the codes or deal with the codes instead of the actual values. So the problem with that, of course, is that you're stuck with that number. That's all SPS knows about this. So for instance, if in this giant data set, I decided I wanted to know how many people in the survey were from Brooklyn, how many people were from Queens, and so on and so forth. By the way, I know I'm recording, so you don't have to remind me. How many of these people in each of these situations are from each of the different boroughs? Well, I know I want to do a count. So that is a frequency, right? I want to know the frequency of people from Brooklyn, people from Queens, and so on and so forth. So in SPSS, the way I do that, or do most operations, I go to Analyze, and I go to Descriptive Statistics. Frequency, or the total count, is a descriptive statistic. And I go to frequencies. I could go to these others as well, but I'm going to go to frequencies, the simplest version of this. I'm going to click on that now in order to work with to tell SPSS what variable that I'm working with. I have to go down here and select it. Okay, and I have to go to borough of residence. I'm going to move that into the variables box. Now SPSS understands that I want to know what the frequency of this particular of the elements of this particular variable are. In other words, how many people from each borough. Now I could, if I had wanted to, I could move others into here. How many in each different ethnic group? How many people are smokers or non-smokers? Any of these categorical variables, and they're the ones shown with these little red, blue, and yellow, red, blue, and green bubbles over here. Those are nominal or categorical variables. The ones with the rulers are numerical variables. So, for instance, if one of them was blood pressure, I wouldn't want to do a frequency of blood pressures because it would give me the number of people who had a blood pressure of 89, the number of people who got a blood pressure of 90, and the number of people with 91 would be unmanageable. It'd be too many different groups to deal with. You normally only do frequencies with categorical variables. So I move this into here, and I tell SPSS that I'm just going to click OK, see what happens. Okay. Obviously, there's a lot of things you could do besides this, but sure enough, it counts the frequency for each one of these groups. This total number of subjects in data set is almost 9,000, 8,600. And it instantly counts for me that 1,602 are from borough number 1, so many from borough number 2, and so on and so on and so forth. Well, this isn't much utility for me, because if I want to commute this information, even if I remember off the top of my head what these various numbers stood for, it wouldn't do me any good, because I wouldn't be able to use this chart to convey this information to another person that doesn't know or never was told what those numbers stand for. In fact, if I were to do this also, let's go back to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics Frequencies, and I'm going to go into Charts, and I'm going to ask it to make me a bar chart as well. Okay, and I'll say OK. It's going to do the same calculation once again, and there we go. Except again, this time borough residents based on so on and so forth. We'll see where this other information comes from. Okay, so again, this is very interesting. I can get a much better feel for what boroughs these are. I'm just as a kind of an aside, I'm going to guess that this one is Queens. Anybody have any idea why I might think that's Queens? What's there that's unusual? Maybe. Wait a second. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know what the demographics are currently. But I certainly would guess that one of these two is Queens and the other is Brooklyn, just because I know that Queens and Brooklyn are the two most populous boroughs, right? And the third, I'm thinking, is probably the Bronx, then Manhattan, and my guess would be that one's Staten Island. So without looking at the code chart, I could make a pretty good guess, because we're randomly selecting these people based on these phone calls, right, from all over New York. So I would think this would be pretty reflective of what the populations are in the boroughs, especially a big sample like this. But I could be wrong, and that's not really what we're here for. But at any rate, so yeah, we need a way to convert these numbers into text. Now, you can do a lot of editing in these tables and charts. You could actually copy them out and or double click on them, and you can actually work with them. For instance, I'll double click on the charts here. Okay, I've opened this in an editing window, and I can actually go in there and select these bars and change the color on them. I can change the order of the bars. Right, you see a change in the background. I can change some of the text and so on and so forth. But that's going to be kind of a pain to manipulate, change the colors and so on and so forth. But rather than do that, why not take advantage of SPSS's built-in capability of dealing with this data and drawing graphs for us and so on and so forth, and give it a bit more information. And the information I want to give it is going to be what these numbers mean. That, in short, is coding. Okay, so I'm going to go back. This is my output window. I'm going to go back to my data window. So here's my data window, and I see that the boroughs are, let's see, okay, these are the boroughs here, okay, and I see the numbers and so on and so forth. I'm going to go to my variable view, take a look at the boroughs, and let's see. The boroughs, it says, let's see what these columns tell us. First, this is the variable name. That's an abbreviation. You can only, you have to start out, you have a lot of rules about that one. And that one is, the rule, among the rules is that it's got to start with a letter, can't start with a number, can't have any odd characters in it, like asterisks, underscores, that kind of stuff. It can have letters and numbers, start with a number, it has a limited length that you're allowed to use, and you can't have any spaces in it. So you wind up kind of abbreviating what that information might be. So for instance, this one is called nutrition 1. There may be other variables later on in this that are nutrition 2 and nutrition 3 and nutrition 4 that are various other nutritional measurements. Okay, and if we go across, it says it's a numeric. The type is numeric. Well, that means that we're putting in a number. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a numeric variable. Just means that we're representing it using a number. Okay, and SPSS assumed that automatically by looking at what the data was that you put in. The width of the variable is 2. It's 2 characters across. Okay, so that might be it might be 1 through 99. Could be any one of those numbers that could represent it. No decimal places, only using whole numbers. Okay, and the label that we've given it, in other words, what this variable, what this variable represents, the question that it represents, or the description of what's in this question, is thinking about nutrition. How? Let's see. I'll stretch this out so you can read the whole thing. Thinking about nutrition, how many total servings of fruit and vegetables did you eat yesterday? Okay, so let's see if I can get across here. One medium. Okay. In fact, you want to know something interesting? That sounds like it's more like a numeric variable than a categorical variable, right? So let's go continue across and see what else we know about that. Oops. Oh, oops. Yeah, I managed to grab all of these. And I'll spread this out a little bit. Okay, let's keep going across on nutrition 1. It doesn't do any special coding for missing variables. In case you have missing variables in your data, one of the things that you can do is you can click into that column, missing, and a little gray box appears next to it, and you can click on that. Well, in this one, you can either define what a missing variable is. If, for instance, when you collected the data, you said that 99 always represented a missing variable, you could code that in here. In other words, you tell it that the number 99 is a missing variable. So if it found 99, it wouldn't use that in the data. It would just simply assume that that's a missing variable. So for the most part, if there's nothing there, if it's blank, SPSS will ignore it and figure it's a missing variable, won't include it in the calculations. Now you can actually give it a range instead of a discrete variable as well. Like anything from 50 to 100 is a missing value. Okay, so there's ways that you can filter the data that way, so that can come in handy. Okay, so I'm going to keep going across. This is the number of characters across that you're going to reserve for that variable. So if you look in data view, okay, that's the width of this box that it's going to make in our output. Okay, and the alignment and so on and so forth, just some geographical kinds of points of interest here. And then finally, the type of variable. Okay, so now this type of variable can be scalar, In other words, a number, numerical variable, ordinal, a numerical variable that has order, or a variable that has order, like good, better, best, or one through, A, B, C, D, and so on and so forth, or a nominal variable. Well, in fact, this kind of suspiciously looks like a scalar variable. Okay, so I'm not sure what it is. Without looking at the code book, I don't know if that's categorized like 1 through 10 pieces, no fruit, 1 through 3 pieces of fruit, 5 through 7 pieces of fruit, which would be categories, or whether it's just the actual number of pieces of fruit. Okay, well, let's take a look at it. Let's go back to the data view, see what they put in here. Let's see. Nutrition. Well, it looks like it's a numerical variable, doesn't it? Let's see, 1 through 4. Let's see if there's anything. Oh, there's a person with 11. It certainly does look like a numerical variable to me at this stage, right? So SPSS guessed incorrectly. This is actually a scalar variable. See, now it's changed to that symbol. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the data view. And I'm going to look at my nutrition one. And I'm going to take a look at nutrition one here as well. Analyze, descriptive statistics, frequencies. Okay, so I can actually go to that variable, and rather than analyze it so that I'm looking at it as a categorical variable and doing frequency, I might be more interested in doing descriptive statistics and understanding what the average number of pieces of fruit and what the variance in the average number of pieces of fruit that we're eating might be. Okay. Now you can also analyze it other ways as well. But at any rate, let's go back to our boroughs. We want to get these numbers to represent the boroughs themselves. Okay, so let's go back to our variable view. Okay, let me get back to my variable view and go into borough, go into variable view and borough. Now, it recognizes a nominal variable, and it has a label that describes what the question says, but it doesn't know what the values mean. See right in here, none. We don't know what the values represent. So again, a gray box appears when I click into the values column. And now I can actually tell it what these variables actually mean. Anybody, I don't have the code book in front of me. Anybody know what these variables mean? Like, what does the number 1 represent? Okay, I'm going to make something up if you guys don't tell me. Anybody know? Nope. Okay. Okay. Number 1's the Bronx. What is the anybody know what the symbol, what the slogan for the Bronx is? I think the Bronx is the borough of progress. Okay, I'm going to add that in. Okay, number 2. You know, each one of these boroughs has a okay, 2 is Brooklyn. Okay, what is Brooklyn? Brooklyn's, I know on the highway when you come into Brooklyn, it says how sweet it is. There's a sign that says how sweet it is, an old reference to the honeymooners. Okay, and I'm going to use just the names for the others, not fool around with them too much. Manhattan. And number 4 is going to be Queens. Okay, all I'm doing is typing into these labels. And number 5 is Staten Island, which is actually Richmond. It's the real name of Staten Island. Okay, so let's see. So I'm going to say OK. And now, if I go to the data view, where previously we had borough, SPSS now has information as to what these numbers actually mean. So if I go into my view and I take a look at this value labels toggle right here, if I click on that, it will substitute for all these places where it has the information. It will substitute what that number actually represents. We got the value labels again. But we got the value labels from the code book. The code book is external to SPSS. If you don't have the information, like for instance, demographics, or let me see if something that's a little bit more obvious in terms of what it represents, like insurance or insured or uninsured, got care, didn't get care. These numbers, we don't know. SPSS doesn't store that information if it's not programmed into the value labels. So you need to go to a separate book and get them out. So, okay, and where I got it here was I went to the variable view. Let me see what that was. Didn't get care 1 and 2. So that might be a yes and a no for answer that question. So let's see. Didn't get care. See if I can find it here. This data set is so big that it's hard to get around here and find everything. Let me go back here and see what column I was in. Didn't get care. How far across was I? Not that far. I shouldn't have gone that far. Here it is. Didn't get care. That's that column right there. So we know that it's only a single number that's represented there, but I had to tell it what that number represents. There we are. So if you look here in the variable view, if I go up here to, if I go to the row that represents that column, didn't get care, then if I go over here, I can tell it that the value that those numbers represent is in the values column. If I click on that, I see that little gray box appear. Click on the little gray box, and now I can tell it that 1 represents yes, and 2 represents no. Whoops. I forgot that. You have to add, even now, you can't just click OK and say that it got it. You have to click add. It warned me there. And then say OK. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to the data view, and you'll see that for that column, let's see where we are now. I think I'm going to start using the abbreviated data set because it's such a pain in the butt to nutrition 1. Here we go. Didn't get care. And you can see those are all yeses and nos in there now. You guys all comfortable with that at this stage? If I go back into the view, if I toggle off values, it's going to change back to the numbers. It still knows what 1 and 2 represent. It just displays it as the numbers and displays it as yes and nos. Sometimes if it's really a long substitution, you may not want to take up the screen space with it and so on and so forth. So you're satisfied with showing the numbers. Okay, so let's go back to our Burrow problem again. This time I'm going to repeat my analysis, analyze, descriptive statistics, frequencies, okay? And still showing borough of residence. I'm not going to change that. And I'm still going to leave it, ask it to make a bar chart for us as well. Okay, except this time when I say OK, our output window is going to pop up. And notice now it's substituted for the numbers, all of the values that I told it that those numbers represented. So now look how much more useful a chart this is. Borough of Progress, how sweet it is. That's Bronx and Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, Queens. And actually, I guess, you know what it is? Brooklyn is the most populous, but Queens has the largest area. That's what it is. Now I remember. I'm kind of surprised that Manhattan's more populous than Queens is now, but I guess that's because of the surge in population in the last 10 or 15 years. And Staten Island, of course, is the least populous of all the boroughs. So at any rate, so and now the other thing is this title. Where does this title? You can edit that title by double clicking on this, getting into the editor. But wouldn't it be more convenient if we didn't have to edit that title either? Well, this comes from, let's take a look if we can't see where this came from in SPSS. I'm going to go back to my data view. Okay, let's see where that came from. So let's go to the variable view so I can take a look at this. Well, gee, let's see, borough. Here's our borough. Okay, I'm going to click away here. Here's our borough, and look at this. The label is where the title comes from. So we have this long description of what this information is based on. Borough of residence based on UHF, whatever that means. For cell, if UHS missing, then based on, it's actually more of a description. We may not need that for our output. If I double click on this and just shorten that to just borough of residence, let's see the effect that that has on our table again. Analyze, descriptive statistics, frequencies. Okay, I'm going to do, I know charts, it hasn't changed, so I know charts is going to be checked off for bar charts and so on and so forth. So I'm going to click OK. And this time, there we go. It modified our titles as well. So this is going to be much more useful to us because then I can copy, I can click into this, say copy, and I can open a Word document or whatever I'm editing with, for instance. If I'm, a lot of people, a lot of students, just so you know, a lot of students like using PowerPoint, among other things. I noticed for, I'm going to start with an empty table here. A lot of students like using PowerPoint. I'm going to get rid of this. Now I've got my table, my chart rather, copied into Excel. So into my clipboard. So if I go paste, whoops, didn't work for me that time, did it? Let me see if I can't do this again. Copy. I got a bug in my version. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but there's a bug in my version of SPSS that keeps me from copying and pasting images. And I've been bugging them to give me a new version of it, of SPSS. So I can update. I'm still using an older operating system on my Mac to run this version. So hopefully on yours, it'll work. I get around that by doing something, by using a screen capture utility on the Mac. And there are these things, same things on the PC. Like that, I copy it. This will let me copy, right? Yours should work easily. So if I go back here and say paste, right, it's pasted in there. And I can resize that. And I can put, I can put in text and graphics around here and so on and so forth. And other graphics and so on and so forth, and print this in landscape or vertically and so on and so forth. So I find this, you can almost use like PowerPoint is almost like a layout program. I find that easier to organize graphics and text, and you have a text box over here on the side. So you can actually draw a text box that's the shape you need, right? And type into it, and it'll come up a little bit more, a little bit better. Yeah, you can bring into any one of the programs that you want to. Photoshop, Illustrator. We're talking pretty high-end, pretty high-end programs here, Aurora. You must work somewhere where you have access to some pretty nice software. Nowadays, that's right. Oh, good, excellent. So you shouldn't have told me that. Now we're going to expect some pretty jazzy graphics from you at this stage. So at any rate, but most people have access to PowerPoint in one form or another. Usually because it comes part of as the package of even the basic Microsoft Office. Usually is Word and PowerPoint and Excel. So chances are, if you have Word and Excel, you probably have PowerPoint buried around there with it. May not have used it before, but it's kind of almost like something you can use as a page layout program. Okay, so maybe that'll help you out. So that's how we deal with that stuff. But you need the code book. Without the code book, sometimes you may be given data that's already been prepared in SPSS with the coding built into it. But you can see here that for the most part, that in this categorical data, that it doesn't have the coding built. In most cases, this doesn't have it built into. You have to download the code book for the community health survey and deal with it yourself. Have you ever been told you have diabetes, right? Now, I would guess most likely that's going to be a yes or a no or don't know. Maybe there's going to be three values. Is going to be my wildest guess. So I'm going to go over there. Let's take a look at that one. That's the 32nd row across, and it's near. Ever told you had asthma? No, same deal. Now, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't, if you wanted to use these other variables like asthma and diabetes. Let's see. I'll go across carefully so I don't miss it. This is most likely, are you insured? Right? And there's a lot of categories to that. So I'm not sure what they might ask there. There might have been what kind of insurance that you had. Diabetes. Here, ever had diabetes? Ever been told you have diabetes? Ever been told you had asthma? Okay, I see ones and twos here. I see ones and twos here also. So my guess is that that's basically just yes or a no. You have been told or you haven't been told. So that's an interesting, simple categories that you can use. That you can check the frequency by uh, 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 ethnicity, by borough, by a lot of other different factors. Or currently have asthma, so on and so forth. Ones and twos again. But in order to make this data useful, you have to know which one the one is. Is one yes, or is the two a yes? And you want to know something? I bet you we can find a really quick way to figure that out. I'm going to go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics. Anybody have a suggestion on a quick way for me to figure out which is the yes and which is the no? Think about it for a second. How would you, if you didn't have the code book, how would you take an educated guess of which one is yes and no? Well, I'm going to find the frequency. Okay, so did I go past it? Yeah, it should be more no's than yeses. Absolutely, right? So let's see. If I can't find it here, heavy smoker, type of smoker. Yeah, let's give it a try. I really don't know. I would, if I coded, I'd probably code it that way. I want to get to it here if I can find it. It's the 32nd one down. Warn me if I go past it. I think I went past it, right? By now. Okay. Race, ethnicity, insured, have use, have one or more. Here we go. If I hover over it, it should show it to me. Again, my version's not cooperating with me. Oh, I think also if I hold down the control option key, I think. Ever been told that you have high cholesterol? Next one, diabetes. I'm going to click that one and move it in here. And it's already set up to give me a bar chart, I think. Yep. Now it's only going to give me ones and twos now, just like before, because it hasn't been told. And in fact, it looks like yes is going to be, yeah, diabetes, and two is going to be don't have diabetes. Now, question with the dots and so on and so forth. I want to show you something interesting about, let's see, for the issue of having dot and dot D and dot R as responses, what should we do? What should we do? Transforming all those in number. Well, let's open a new file. I know this